Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is session 26 of Paradigm Shift from Pharaoh Storehouse to a Priest Storehouse. So, we are going to be unpacking some creative solutions that we have used as our home hub to be able to stretch budgets within our group. And hopefully, you'll get some creative ideas as you listen to me. Some of them you'll be able to apply yourself, and then you might be able to bounce off of those. Some of these we've gotten in dreams to be able to implement in different situations, and others just by natural knowledge of doing the math and making things work. And so, again, at the heart of everything, you have to have the fruit of the Spirit, walking in the Spirit and by the Spirit to make these kind of concepts work. There has to be godly character on both parties in order to make a lot of these work in a way that it is uplifting and building up of everybody involved. If you don't have that godly character and you're operating with people that don't want to repent of pride, don't want to repent of greed, these concepts are not going to work. It will fall apart, and it will end up causing resentment and bitterness to grow. And so, before I even share any of that, make sure that you are working with people that have Jesus Christ at the center and not themselves at the center, so that as you work through this, you've got that relationship where it's you, that person, and Jesus Christ in it together, so that they will be a joy to implement. So, one of the first that I want to share, I've mentioned it a little bit in previous videos, but just so that I've got a whole bunch listed out in one video. We ended up having a situation where there was somebody who had a lot of debt, and we had access to be able to dump, to be able to pay off all of that debt up front. But the person was not willing to do it for free. He didn't want charity. He was like, well, okay, that's fine. That's good. But he also recognized that he didn't have the finances to be able to pay it back in the foreseeable future. So it's like, okay, well, let's see what God has to say. And I ended up getting this download in a dream where we were able to front load by paying off all of the debt direct. So we went to the utilities company, we went to the property tax company, we ended up paying everything direct. That was charity. But then he was willing to come to us, and then on a weekly basis, we were able to fellowship with him, and he was able to serve us in any capacity that he desired. And that was his way of being able to pour back into us without us having to pay for whatever he was doing while he was with us. And so he had talents and skills that we did not have. But then, because he was in our home, we're eating together, sometimes 2 meals in that day. So now we're building up relationship. We're modeling healthy family dynamics. We were able to save the interest as well as the income tax from that situation. So it ended up making the income pretty much stretch double what it could have if we were trying to sew into this guy and make him pay, or if we paid for the service and then he turned around and took that income to go try to deal with the debt. That wouldn't have worked with as much success. Whereas we slammed out the debt up front, and then he served after the fact in a myriad of different ways. And he was able to not only get the dollar value of twice the amount of what we gave, but in turn, he was able to get all of the non-financial blessings as well. So that was one way of front loading. And there was a time commitment that was given, that it's like, okay, we'll do this up front in exchange for this amount of time. And now it's like, you know what, this is so much fun. This is not even considered work. That now that time has been limit has been removed, and it is now a joyful giving and receiving in that relationship. So that's one. Bartering instead of renting is another one that we've been able to implement with some other people. That, okay, we'll live rent free with you, but in exchange, you're going to give us babysitting so we don't have to pay for daycare. That was one situation that was used. And it ended up working out to about the same dollar value. But now both parties are serving one another, and there's a relational, you've got each other's backs. And so instead of putting a dollar value on a person, now there's a relational value, a value of honor, and of camaraderie that is building. And so that was one. The other thing too is, at least up here in Canada, you have to pay taxes on any rental income, but you don't have to pay income tax on services freely given and freely received. And so even though those services have dollar value, because there was no dollars exchanged, you don't have to pay income tax. And so that's another savings there of being able to shift out of the system and move into a service and a give and take service mentality. Another solution that we did was when Grandma and Grandpa, they moved in here, we ended up taking over their seniors care. So they were in a nursing home with the cost to the tune of $3,200, which was a lot cheaper because we got the COVID special, as they called it. And so because so many people were taking people out of nursing homes, and they wanted to be on their own, they wanted to be independent. And so we honored that request. So they were in a nursing home until such time that they were evicted for not getting the mandated requirement of the medication. And I don't want this video taken off again for saying the banned and censored words. And so in turn, that saved $3,200 a month. And they, as we discovered in the long run, they actually got better care, better quality of life. They got more stimulation, and their Alzheimer's and dementia actually started regressing in where they were getting back skills and abilities that they didn't have before. So, for example, when Grandma came here, she couldn't even remember what her ABCs were. She couldn't remember how to count to 10 anymore. And now she's assisting with grade 3 schoolwork. And so when we're investing into people, you in an atmosphere of love, that you're able to expand the potential of everyone involved. With community care, because we had a community of people that were willing to serve, and different people had different assets and skills, that we were able to put our community into, when there was an emergency, we were able to call on people like right away, say, okay, I need this, 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 and this. What needs are each person available to meet? We need meals prepared. We need transportation to medical appointments. We need the medical care done. We need the housekeeping, cleaning, and maintenance of the property taken care of. And we were able to pull all of that together without having to spend a penny. Like, churches ask you to come and volunteer in a church program, and they want your time serving at a church building. But if you shift that out and you start doing that in a home setting, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, as well as a testimony to the neighbors of what's going on. Who are you? Why are you helping? Where are you from? It's like, we're doing this for free. And then it starts getting their attention, because now they're getting to see love in action, which is so rare in the society where everything has a dollar value. And if you're not being paid for it, why are you doing it? And it attracts attention. And then you're able to use that as an opportunity to share the gospel and to start meeting the needs of other people. That doesn't take much more time. And you're able to start adding beauty into their lives and health into their lives just with a simple prayer. Another scenario that we ended up having, because I've got nursing background, somebody during COVID, with all the lockdowns and everything, they needed a dressing change done, and they had the supplies, but they couldn't get the person ready, and the dressing had fallen off. So it was a crisis situation. And if it was left exposed to air, the wound could have been compromised. And so I'm getting a call at 3:00 in the morning. I was already up breastfeeding my baby. And they're like, is there any way that you can send somebody, or even you come yourself? And I'm like, yep, baby's already awake. So, yep, we'll be there in half an hour. And so I was able to use my professional training to be able to minister to a specialized service to her. And because I had experience with wound care before, I was able to get that done. I didn't have to pay her, or she didn't have to pay me anything. It was an act of service, an act of love. And then as time went on, she ended up ministering back to us. And again, this give and take, where she was able to meet a need that I needed, and she was able to jump for me. So when you're sewing back and forth into people, you can get out of the financial value and start valuing people for who they are and the asset that they are. One of the other creative solutions that we ended up doing to reduce the budget to make money stretch. In the previous videos, you would have heard that we were supporting 20 people with only 2 people working at one point, at the worst of the lockdowns. And one of the strategies that we were using there was offloading unnecessary vehicles, whether it was selling them, whether it was just taking them off the road. Now you're not paying insurance, you're not having to pay maintenance until the income levels can get back up. And so no one's needs were compromised by taking those vehicles off the road, because we had a community that was carpooling, and we all had each other's backs. And we were, when you've got the maximum usage of that vehicle with the least amount of expenses and maintenance going forward, like, why drive a vehicle with only one person in it when you can fill up a 7-seater van and take that one vehicle, same amount of gas, and it just might take a few extra minutes to pick other people up, or it saves on taxi fare, which is a whole lot more expensive than gas. And so, and then one of the other things that we did was, as we were carpooling, there was one family situation where, instead of the young man having his own vehicle with his own insurance, we were then able to put that driver on as a secondary driver, so that now his insurance is a lot less than it would have been. And now you are only paying the maintenance and the insurance and all of that stuff of one vehicle instead of two vehicles. And it just required self-sacrifice of learning how to schedule and share the vehicle and being considerate of one another. And that was able to reduce the monthly expenses in that way. I shared the testimony before of the healing prayer, how it reduced the need for having to buy medical equipment, of not needing to pay for walkers or commodes or tube feeds or dressing changes, or the medical staff to be able to come in and do all of that stuff. And with another aspect of healing prayer with somebody else, they were having a stroke. And I got the call, and we ended up going to that house, prayed for them. And it was, they called me before they called the ambulance. And it's like, okay, God, you're going to show up and you're going to show off on this. But we still should call the ambulance just so that we're doing our due diligence. And so I got there, got an assessment of what was going on. We prayed for him, commanded the witchcraft attack, which I identified that's what was causing all of this. There was a targeted witchcraft assignment to try to delay and cause devouring in another area. And it was just, he was the weakest link. And so he ended up getting hit. And so we commanded the stroke to be reversed. There's a verse in Isaiah 30, verse 26, about God will heal the stroke of his people. And so we were just standing on the word of God. And by the time that the ambulance paramedics arrived, and I had my little notes jotted out of, this is his vitals, and this is this, and this is that. And they're like, are you a nurse? I'm like, yes. They're like, okay. So then they did their own assessment. They're looking at my notes and looking at theirs. So like, they don't match. And I'm like, well, we did pray for healing. Well, we're waiting for you to arrive. And by the time that their assessment was complete, the stroke symptoms had completely reversed. And then they're like, in our opinion, there's no value in going to the emerge, just to confirm that everything's okay. There's all the tests that we were able to do here. He's okay. So that was an example of not having to do the ER costs and the all of the stress and the consequences of all of that. And then for him to not have to live with a stroke for the rest of his days. And so applying the kingdom of heaven in those situations. Let's see. Next one. Because so many families were going homeless during COVID, where they had open doors for curses to land, that now where do people store their stuff? And there was one family that the storage spaces were getting to such a premium here in this region because so many people were losing housing and trying to find places to rent, that people were jacking up the price of storage. And so one family was having to pay the cost of $2,000 a month just for storage. And it wasn't a crazy amount of stuff. So at one point, between our garage, our basement, and our shed, we ended up having storage stuff for 4 different families. And it was a little wild, but we were able to save the cost of all of that. We were able to meet a need. Yeah, it meant we had to park out on the street. So we were willing to make that sacrifice in order to save the dollar value of the storage. And then on top of that, it's also building trust with a person that, you know what, I'm going to have your back. Like, what I do have, I give to you. Kind of like with Peter, when he prayed for the gentleman, like, silver and gold have I none, but in the name of Jesus Christ, stand up and walk. And so giving what we do have in order to make an impact in somebody else's life. And then as things moved on, we were able to get our garage space back, and then it got filled up with other people. And then there was another scenario where somebody heard what we were doing and saying, well, I'm about to get rid of my storage unit, but I'm locked in at the old price of only $200. And so what they ended up doing is that they grandfathered the new person in at the old rate. And that gentleman was able to get favor and access to that storage unit for $200 instead of $2,000. And so, again, leveraging the resources that you have. One of the other assets that we were looking at is identifying where were the mortgage-free hospitality homes. So with our home, when we worked it out, we were housing people for $50 per person per month because we didn't have a mortgage, and we had no debt. And so we start, like, we've got triple bunks in the kids' rooms. Like, all of our couches we try to maximize our space so that we've got a futon over here. This one over here can flip out to take two people. And so now we've got bedding for 4 people just by having couches that are able to flip out and give extra space. Contrast that with a different family who they had a rented property and they were paying $1,000 per person per month. And so mortgage-free hospitality home at $50 a month, or helping somebody pay their rent at $1,000 per person per month. You want to be putting your money where you're going to get the maximum impact. So identifying those resources. Another scenario that we were investigating is somebody needed live-in caregiving, and they were at the risk of having to go to a nursing home. And the idea was, well, you know what? You have extra bedrooms in that house that other people need, and you need caregivers. So move somebody into those extra bedrooms in exchange, free housing in exchange for caregiving for so many hours a week. And then you can have multiple people carrying the load so that you've got coverage, so that one person is awake, the other person could be asleep, and that you've got 24-hour coverage for the senior, and they don't have to go into the nursing home, and they don't have to receive the mandated medications. And that solution was not utilized. And what happened in that scenario is that now they had to pay the nursing home cost. They ended up getting the medication and ended up having a severe reaction and eventually died. And then also, because of the way that the nursing homes work here and they freeze the assets, the house ended up having to be sold in a down market. And then the family ended up not getting the value that they could have from that home. And so you've got one where it requires self-sacrifice and change in a love where people are serving one another in order to be a win-win situation. Or we're going to do it the world's way, pay for nursing care, pay to receive everything that system requires. And then they ended up losing the investment that they thought was going to go to the grandchildren. And they ended up losing their inheritance because they chose to go in the world's way. So that was a solution that was not used, and the consequence. One of the other things that we were utilizing as a group was bulk purchasing and canning and then gleaning. Although I guess you should sort of go it in the other way. We were gleaning and then canning the gleanings. So with bulk purchasing, my husband had access to be able to use the business center of Costco, and we were able to get like 50 pounds of potatoes, and we're saving, I think it was 30 cents per pound of potatoes. And when you start adding that up across 20 people of how many potatoes they eat, that's a significant price. And it was like, okay, we get one big bag and then we divide it up so that every person has potatoes in their own house. Or peppers. We were getting like those big boxes of peppers. And then the way that we do it here in this house is that we like diced peppers so that we put them in different recipes and stuff. So while people were over at our house chatting away, instead of just sitting on the couch chatting, we now have them at the kitchen table and they're chatting away as they're dicing peppers. So they're working and talking at the same time. And again, you can get the elderly involved with that so that now they're feeling useful. The children get to do it as well once you teach them how to use knives safely. Then with gleaning, in this region, grocery stores, certain grocery stores were refusing to serve people that did not receive the medication. And so access to provision was not acceptable. There was restrictions to getting into Costco. There was restrictions to getting into Walmart in different areas. There was restrictions into other grocery stores that we would have normally used. And so we ended up utilizing whenever there was available of natural local food supplies that we didn't have to go to a big box store that had all of these mandates, the farmers that were available. And so with the gleaning, I happened to be walking past a gentleman's backyard, and with my children, we're coming back from a park, and he showed me 2 little raspberries, and he's like, have you ever seen raspberries this late in the season? And I'm like, it was the end of October. I'm like, no, I haven't actually. It's unusual for around here. And he's like, yeah, and then look at this wonderful apple tree, and I can't get up on the ladder because I had a fall and there's no one to take the apples. My kids don't want them. My grandkids don't want them. They're going to go to waste. And I was like, ding, I'll take the apples and then I'll disseminate those apples into my network. And so when they found out what we were doing, not only did we get to pick a van load worth of apples from that one tree, it was massive. We were able to receive all of the canning jars that she had because she had decided she's too old and I'm not going to be able to do any more canning. And so now we had the jars, we had the apples, and then we pooled our labor to then start processing all those apples and divvying them up, the fresh apples that could go into the cold storage, canning the apples that were left over. So now we still have apples on our shelves. And when it got out, that's what we were doing. And we were disseminating the food where we could, whoever needed it, that now people were dropping off food from local greenhouses. And it's like, we have overflow. We can't sell this. Can you use it? You know people who know people. It's like, okay, let's divvy out this food. Sometimes it was a little overwhelming, sort of being the go-between, being the funnel to other people. But that was the favor that God was blessing us with. And then that led to more gleaning, where now we had access to, I think it was 12 or 13 trees that we were able to glean. We were able to bring some people with us to get on the property, picked those apples, and then we were able to then trade, because by that point, people were giving us other things in exchange for the apples. And so now we were able to share with the person giving us the apples. We were then in turn able to give them peaches and beets and pickles. And so we were able to, again, it's the give and take. And it was so much fun. And then people are learning how to can that didn't know how to can. So now they're getting that resource of learning new skills that they didn't know before. And then generational skill set mentorship. This one was already going on without us being involved, but we got to receive the blessing from that generational skill set. So this young lad had a love for tinkering with mechanical stuff. He was very mechanically minded. And somebody had recognized that in him and started sewing into him so that by the time he was only 17 years old, he was able to fix tractors and fertilizer combining machines and fix, like, I don't even know what they're called, those big cranes with the, like what the electrical guys can go up, like with those big booms that they can go up high, and they've got like that little platform that they can stand on. He was able to fix the hydraulics of that. And he's only 17 years old. And he was able to learn all of that without any cost to him. And then he was able to give those skills without cost to other people. And so it's give and take with the knowledge that was received, and that investment into that teenager's life taught him character. It taught him the wisdom, because a companion of fools suffers harm. Like a teenager could be out goofing around and getting involved in a lot of trouble, or in this case, walk with the wise and grow wise. And so now this older generation of a grandfather age, or great grandfather age, actually, in that situation, was able to sow into that teenager, kept him out of trouble. He learned valuable skills. And so now he's able to take those skills and build on it so that he can eventually get into a paying job. And so that's one example. A other example of mentorship coming down is where there was one family that they were taught how to sew and how to alter clothing. And so then in turn, when it was time for their daughter to get married, the mother was able to make the daughter's wedding gown. Instead of having to pay thousands of dollars for the wedding gown, she was able to buy the material for, I think it was $300, I was told, and make this gorgeous wedding gown that looked like it came out of like a really fancy wedding store. No one would have known it was homemade unless people actually said it. And so again, that's another how skills being passed down generationally can be a financial saving. But we have to shift our thinking from always having to pay for something, and instead investing into people that can invest into people. Okay, so I'm going to end there for this video, and we will be back in a little bit with the third video for the night.